those of you in the back, here's some chairs here, and she's getting extra chairs. So here are 2 chairs right here that I see handy. And she'll bring some more. Welcome everyone, while we're getting more chairs. Welcome, tell us who you are and where you're from. Did you all hear her? Say a little louder. Pittsburgh.
Rex Davis from Pittsburgh.
I'm Shirley Jackson, and this is my home.
Next.
John Boyd from Dallas, but back and we Pittsburgh, Texas.
And my mother and his mother were same also.
Daryl, South Derry. Dallas, Texas.
Anthony Greg Dow.
Great Michael right here.
Shirley Robertson, born in Hillsborough, raised in Mineola.
Uris Robinson, Hawkins.
Phyllis Cornell, Pittsburgh.
Female Hill, Pittsburgh.
I'm from Pittsburgh, Texas.
Another cousin. I have 2 cousins right here we missed.
Oh, Brittany Jeffrey, Gilman, Texas.
Carolyn Marshall, Gilmer, Texas.
They always rock and loud.
Cousin.
Yeah, see what? Rock around.
Yeah, cousin. Jory, introduce you. Welcome. And so how many chairs for we need? And that's my husband. I said, this chair, my chair is available. Here are 2 chairs in front also.
I used to play ball when y'all young.
Okay, so there are 4. So I'm just going to raise it to make sure everybody has a seat.
Okay.
So welcome.
Available.
So welcome to They Won't Let Me Rest, the importance of preserving your family history. I'm Dr. Gail L. Thompson. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come here. Some people drove long distances, but even if you just drove from around the corner, I'm very grateful that you're all here. There are other places that you can be. I want to give Gwen Jewett a special shout out for having me here. Gwen invited me here, and I'm honored to be here. My cousin, Brenda Jeffrey, stand up, cousin Brenda. We just met last summer.
We did, and what a treat, I'm telling you.
I'm actually here, cousin Perry, our genealogy team that I'll say more about, and my husband, we were here. And it turns out, another cousin said, Gail, you and Brenda are cousins.
Yes,
and
right.
the rest has been history. We've
That's
been in
right.
touch ever since.
We've been in touch
She
ever
is
since.
a former Gilmer City Councilwoman. She's a hospice nurse, and she is on the board here at this museum. So her sister, cousin Dora, is sitting next to her.
That's right.
But I also want to thank all of you for being here. Many of you who are seated here today or standing have contributed to my family history journey. Some of you have shared stories, photos, audio tapes, letters, or other information, obituaries. I'm going to come back to obituaries later on. Obituaries with me. Several of you have encouraged others to attend this presentation, And many of you, as I said before, have driven long distances to be here. Unfortunately, as a result of the time that it's going to take me to get through the presentation and then for us to have Q&A time, I can't thank every single person by name, but please know that I am grateful to every single one of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your contributions and for your support. So here's a brief bio. I am a descendant of numerous Upshur County and Camp County former residents. I am a retired professor. As the CEO of Inspirations by Gail, I provide workshops, lectures, and keynote addresses for schools, churches, community organizations, family wellness groups, and I'm passionate about empowering African American women and girls. I am also a genealogist who works on family history research every single day that I can, at least 5 days a week, if not more. I am the author of the following books, and I'm not going to go through the book titles, but most of my books are available on Amazon.com, or you can ask your local bookstore to order if you're interested. In spite of what I just said, my most important accomplishments are being a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. This amazing man standing right there, Mr. Rufus Thompson, can you just kind of move up a little closer so people can We have been married, August 2nd will be 38 years. And I don't tell very many people this, but we were only dated for 3 months, okay? Our marriage, thank God, has lasted for 38 years. He is a former middle school teacher. He has taught university courses. He's an author. He has his own plane, so during his spare time, he flies. I call his plane his other wife, okay? But that is his hobby. He is passionate about flying, and he has recently started a new business. Came out of retirement, started a new business called thepocketadvocate.com. He has developed some amazing tools to help educators and parents communicate more effectively with each other, and supervisors and employees. So check that out, thepocketadvocate.com, please. Our daughter, Dr. Nafisa Thompson Spires, is a professor at Cornell University, and she is a best-selling author. In fact, today Friday, today's Saturday. Yesterday, and I don't know if it aired yesterday, it was going to air later, but they recorded one of the stories from her best-selling book for PBS, American Experiences. But anyway, that's her daughter, Dr. Nafisa Thompson Spires. In the middle is our middle child, Nashay Thompson, who is an educator and an entrepreneur. She owns Nashay Cosmetics. Check her out online, NashayCosmetics.com. Our baby, Stephen Thompson, is a mechanical engineer, and he is a musician. He lives in Minnesota, and our pride and joys are our grandsons, Ivan and Isaiah, ages 10 and 13. So I want to share a story that made an unforgettable impact on me with you, and it may seem like a long story, but you'll see why I'm telling this story. I'm going to start by telling that story and then share the main points that I hope that you will take away from this presentation. And then I'm going to explain 5 reasons why it's important for you to preserve your family history. I'll explain some ways that you can get answers about your family history, and the handout that you have has a lot of the ways on there that I'll elaborate on, but there are also some there that I won't have time to go into detail about, because I want us to have enough time for questions and comments. I will make some concluding remarks, and then I will share a final story. I'm going to start with the story and end with the story, and then we'll get into the Jethro Harris Jr. Viewers go out and find Rocky Mount, Texas, in Camp County in 1936. And his grandfather, Gilbert Harris, owned a lot of land in Rocky Mount. So they tried anybody who's related to any Harrises here. They went all over the Harrises are very hard to find slave stories there. The Texas one is volume 16. My mother, Velma Boyd, also known as Bay, was born in Pittsburgh, Texas, in Camp County. The slave and her grandfather, Richard Boyd, owned a lot of the land The Oklahoma Historical Society has a lot of great
However,
information. How many of you have been told you have Indian blood in you?
1878.
Right, don't be ashamed, raise your hand, because I am. Okay, you can get everything that you need to know in order to find out if your ancestors were put on the official rolls of the 5 so-called civilized tribes, the Choctaw, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, and the Seminole. Those were the ones, and all their stuff is in the book, but let me tell you this, what, there's a book, I'll show you in a minute. But you get it all for free by going to the historical, the Oklahoma Historical Society. And those final rolls have the list of who was accepted.
My
Freedmen,
great-grandmother, Julia
newborn
Bell, who was
babies who
Peter's
were
mother,
enslaved
also
at the
lived
time
Peter
when,
and Betty.
all of this, who got
Julia
land,
was
who
born in
didn't.
South Carolina
Please just do
in
this, read
1800.
1 or 2 applications.
Peter and
For
Betty were the
enrollment in the
grandparents
5
of Peter
civilized
Sussman,
tribes. Read that,
my
Rogers, I'll
mother's
just throw that, because
grandfather.
that's the one, first one I
Sublets,
read.
Bells,
Because of Malikas or
Faulkners,
Thomas
Walkers,
Crawford.
Grings,
Said
anybody
read this,
related
Bear
Porters
Rogers, one of
to
Perry's
Peter
relative
Sublett,
ancestors, and one of
raise your
Malikas'
hand.
ancestors, and one of mine. Read it, you will cry, because let me tell you this, before you go around bragging that I got a lot of Indians, just know the Indians were just as racist as white
San
folks
Diego.
were, our enslaved ancestors. And if you read an application for enrollment, you will
They
see
had 4
what they did
children
to cheat
together.
our
So here you
ancestors who
see
were
my mother
enslaved.
holding my late
If you got a
sister
lot of
Tandy,
Indian blood in you, it's
my
very
sister
likely that
Tracy
your
standing in
ancestors
front
in
of my
slavery
parents, and my
was an
father was holding
Indian.
me.
A lot of Indians had slaves,
So here are my
okay?
mother's 4
And
Harris children.
if you read
Tracy,
these
my late
applications,
brother Jeffrey, who was
they
my
will
father's
say,
only
"App-
son.
enrollment denied,
My
we
late
will
sister
not accept
Tammy
that person."
and me
He
when
says
he
he's
came.
part of it. Van Rogers knew his grandmother, who was half Indian, knew her
After my
name, knew where
parents
she came from.
divorced,
Mary
my father
Wassall,
moved to
all of this
Northern
is in there.
California.
He knew his history.
Although each
He
of my
doesn't speak
parents
the
had
Choctaw
2
language,
additional
he has
children,
bushy
I
hair, he
always
has
missed.
thick lips, all the little
Not
racist
having
terms that he
extended
used
family
denied
members
him from getting the
living
land
nearby.
that his ancestors.
I'm trying not to get
deserved.
emotional, because yesterday I
Read some of
got
the
to hang out with
applications
9
that you're
cousins,
looking
and the
for,
day
and you will
before,
see,
several
before you
cousins.
go, it's
So
all
for
right
the
to brag
person that
about your
grew up in
Indian
the
blood, but
little
just
girl
know,
who
okay,
felt
they
changed.
didn't like your ancestors
It's
any more than a whole
overwhelming
bunch
to
of
me,
other
like
people
cousins
didn't
here
either,
today.
okay? Now, I may never get invited
So
back
even though
here
we
often
often
visited
visited
Texas
Texas
down
during
in
summer
today,
days,
in the next times.
cousins,
All I can be is who I am.
grandparents.
All right, but anyway, you
and
get a
other
lot
close
of
relatives
information
living in San
pertaining to
Diego.
your Indian ancestors through this. And let me say this too, because
During
I'm
one
gonna
of
talk
our
about
trips to
DNA
Texas,
tests.
my
If you
maternal
take a
grandmother,
DNA test, or if you
Frances
take
Sully
one, you say,
Johnson,
where's my
told me
Indian
a
blood?
story
If
about
the
her
third, if it was
maternal
your third great
great-grandfather,
grandparent or
Daddy Bear. Do we have
further
any
down the
Johnsons or
line, it's
people
not going
related
to
to
show up
Johnsons?
in your bloodline. It has to be much closer than your third grand. So it doesn't mean there's not Indian
The
blood
story
in you,
that
but it
Grandmother
doesn't show up in your
Frances told me
DNA
about
after
Dandy
the second
Bear is
great
one of the
grandparent.
main reasons
Keep that in
why
mind.
I am passionate about
So there's
researching
the
and
research
preserving
guides that will
history.
help you. It says finding your American Indian
According to
ancestors.
Grandmother
You get all
Frances,
that
Dandy
from the
Bear was a
Oklahoma
mixture of
Historical
African
Society
American and
website.
American
The
Indian.
National Archives has a lot
He
of
was
wonderful
born in Georgia.
information that you will
His
help you.
slave
There are a lot
name
of
was
great
Daniel
YouTube videos that you can
And you
sit
see
there and
Abram
become
is
an
spelled
expert
several
on
different
how to
ways
ask
because
answers
the
about your
census
family
and other
history,
records
how to
are
trace your
spelled numerous
African,
ways.
how to trace your ancestors as slaves.
There's an Abram back
There are a
there.
lot of guides
Phyllis,
for
raise your hand. She
African
has an
Americans
Abram in her
searching
family
for
tree.
their
We're trying to connect her Abram.
back to the DNA test.
Right.
One way to get answers is to consider taking one. Has
At
anybody
some
taken one?
point, an
Besides
enslaver
Barry
took
and me
Dandy
and
Bear
my
from
husband?
Georgia
Let
to
me say,
Mississippi.
cousin Phyllis, I hope it
In Mississippi, Dandy Bear
Taking a
fathered
DNA
18
test can provide you with
children by
a
his
lot
wife.
of good information about your ancestry.
Well,
and
now, see, I
age.
heard somebody say, let me
With
just digress here to say
relatives
something that I
like
had in my
These
presentation that I
relatives
took out,
may
but
be
you all
willing
have
to
given me
share
permission to
information
add.
with you.
And that is this.
Expand your tree.
It was
You're gonna
very
find a lot of
common for
relatives
slavers
who
to
are
use,
Thank you so
enslavers
much
to
for
use
coming. I
African American
appreciate it.
men
Thank you.
as breeders.
A lot of your
especially
relatives
after
are going to come from
1808,
Virginia.
when the
They're taken from
transatlantic
Africa
slave
or from
trade
the
was
West
outlawed
Indies
in
too.
the
Tobacco
domestic slave
plantations
trade,
in Virginia
whereby
were
slaves
sold
were
from the
taken from
Chesapeake
Virginia,
Bay
North
area to
Carolina, and every
Maryland,
place you can
all
think
over,
of.
all the way
to the
down
south.
to Georgia and inward. That's what
Okay,
was shocking to
but
me.
they started
Deep
using,
roots in
putting black
Virginia
men in
and North
pens
Carolina.
actually, and
But
making
you
them
got
breed
deep
as
roots
if
in
they
the
were
Caribbean,
aliens.
in
So when
South
you hear that a
America,
man
because
has no
most
slaves
slaves,
when the
95%
or whatever,
of the slaves
often
were
it's because
taken
that was instilled
from Africa
in
were
people
taken
through
to
the
South
slavery.
America and to the Caribbean So
less than
according to
4%
grandmother
of all human
Francis,
race. We have ancestors all over the
after
world.
he
So
fathered
people take
those
DNA
18
tests, and more
children, he
people
was
who were born and
then
raised in
sold
Africa
from his
are
family
taking
to
them now.
someone
My
in
husband's
Texas.
100%
trying to find
Ashanti
that
relative. Her
someone.
DNA test results
That's
just came
the,
back. She lives in Ghana, was born
identity
in
of
Ghana.
that
Her
individual.
parents were born in Ghana.
Cousin
One of my
Saint, I
Igbo
don't know where
relatives,
cousin Saint
100%
is, she's
Igbo.
supposed to
Her
be here.
DNA test
Do you know,
results came back. So
they
you can
brother-
get a lot of fascinating information
Frank,
through this.
I know.
I have learned that I'm 90 to 92% African.
And I asked her last night if she had transportation. No, cousin
The
Saint will be
Indian blood don't
91
show
years
up
old.
in it.
She is truly.
So I'm
really
surprised
true
about
and
the
not
time
what I
here.
was
Oh,
over
never
there.
mind, we'll say that.
Anyway, I'm so
I
sorry
have
to
learned
hear that
things
because
of
I'm
some
gonna
of the
talk about
tribes
her a
that my
lot,
people
what she
came
has
from.
shared.
I've
So
learned a lot
cousin
of
Saint
wonderful
and
things,
cousin
but there are pros
Verdell,
and
who
cons
could
to
not be
taking
here
DNA
because
tests,
of a
okay?
medical situation.
Do your
They
research.
told me that Dandy Bear
If
and his
you are
family
taking a
lived in
DNA
Ore
test
City
or
and
not,
Coffeyville, here in Upshur.
Whatever you're doing to, whatever methods
In
you're
Texas,
using to
that
find
Dandy Bear
out about your
fathered
family history,
18
be prepared for secrets to
18
surface.
that's a total of 36
Adoptees.
children
A
that we
lot
know
of
of.
people who were adopted.
In Texas, Dandy Bear fathered
have
18
taken
children
DNA
by
tests.
his wife,
So far,
Polly
we have
Williams, who
connected
was
my
also
husband and
born
maybe
in
at least
Georgia.
5 who are looking for answers.
Francis, their
We
first
found a
child
brother
was
that my
born in
husband didn't know we had. The brother
1861.
didn't know my husband
In
existed.
1866,
and they
their
were raised as
third
children. They
child,
grew up,
William,
or were born
was
six
born.
blocks
And
apart
in
from me.
1890,
And a brother was
their
7
last
years old, I
child
think, when
was
we
born.
connected with him.
So
Secrets
William
will
A.
surface
Boone
like that.
was my
Another,
maternal
something that else that
second
surfaces, my husband
great-grandfather.
and I have 65
William's daughter
cousins in
raised
common.
my mother.
Some from Camp
And
Upshur.
also
So
raised
you all who know
a
that
baby
you're my
brother. I'm
cousin,
sorry,
my
his name is
my
John
husband's
Boyd, but I
cousin,
grew up
too.
calling him
We're
baby
legal.
brother. But my mother is raised in the same household.
You
We
may
gonna
reach
do
out
it,
to people, you may
That's
reach
my-
out to
we
people in
might be
Canada
key.
and they don't wanna give you.
No one really knows the person who I'm talking
Rick
about who
Walls,
raised my
remember
mother
that prior
Williams,
to
daughter.
1870, most
No
of our
one knows her
ancestors
real
were
first
enslaved, so it's
name
hard to
because
find their
throughout her
records.
lifetime she
1870,
changed it
shocking
several
information,
times.
prison
And
records, a
some
lot of prison
census
records
takers
you can access
misspelled
through
it.
his work. And you
For
were shocked at
example,
what
in
some of our
1900, a
ancestors were.
census taker
I checked
reported
the
her
Camp
name
County
as
jail.
Gubby
Everybody
A.
in the jail
Brown
was
with
black.
an N instead of Abram.
Not necessarily because they committed crimes.
In
I won't
1910,
say more,
a
but I
census
said,
taker
every
reported
single
her
person
name
in the
as
Camp County
Morris
jail in 1909 is a
A
black.
U,
Come on
Abram
now.
spelled with a U.
You know there's something
Other
shady
names for
about
her
that.
that appear in various records are
Rick
Grundy,
Walls,
Lundy,
shocking
and
information, prison
Dudley.
records, lies about
However,
paternity.
in Pittsburgh, Texas, she was known
Somebody
as
who
Miss
Daddy
Put,
so-and-so may not
Mama
know that. I found that
Put,
out.
Cousin
I was
Put,
my close
Grandmother Put, or Big Mama.
information that
Made
made
everybody
everybody
very
angry.
my
And then
great-grandmother
other
Put.
surprises. I could look in the mirror as I said. and
Somebody
see
told me yesterday, you
they got a lot
remind
of
me
African
of Miss Put.
names.
In fact, all of grandmother
Grandmother
Put's descendants, raise your hand and
talking
keep
about
it.
Caucasian cousins who have taken
Three.
DNA tests, thousands of
And,
them.
and this is, I'm just
showing
but back to
you
the story, as I
some.
listened to my
Four
grandmother
of the
Francis'
eight
story
cousins
about
on my
Dandy
mother
Bear, I
and
was
father's
troubled
side.
by many
Keep standing up,
aspects
'cause there's
of that
more.
story.
These are
First
just a
of all,
few.
Of course, I was upset.
This
that
reminded
Dandy
me of
Bear
the Queen
and his parents
died a few years
and
ago.
those 18
Queen
children
Elizabeth.
in Mississippi and some of the children born in Texas.
This
were
one, all you Sutherland, Bells, and Faulkners, there's one of your
I
Bell
was
cousins
sad
from
that he
Virginia,
had to
okay?
leave his
That's
18
right.
Mississippi children behind when an enslaver.
This guy, now see, if I would have saw him on the street, there's no way I would have thought that's my cousin. But he's my cousin, okay? And I'm gonna come back to this in a minute, so be prepared for surprising information. This is on your, a lot of this is on your thing, I'm not gonna go through this. There are additional ways to get answers, please check out the, if you can handle it, Slave Voyages website, you can find out.
According to grandmother Francis, when Dandy Bear was
enslaved
before
before
they
they
were
were
out here hanging himself
from
from a
a
tree.
tree.
For those of you who are saying she got a PhD and she's saying he hanged
So,
himself from a
let me
tree. Hanged
wrap
is
this
what
up.
you say
I'm
when you're referring to a
shorten
human
the
being
last
whose
story.
life ended on
You
a
can
tree
preserve
or
your
by
family
lynching.
history by oral
Hung is
storytelling, building
I
your
hung a
family
picture
tree,
on the wall,
interviewing
so hung
family
is for
members, writing
objects, so
it
just in
down,
case.
writing it down, sharing it with others.
Anyway, during
keeping
one of my
important family
Texas
documents in
visits,
a
my
chest, like
grandmother
cousin
even showed me
Merle's
the tree
George's
from
grandmother
which
kept everything in a chest, making
On
an
which he
audio
killed himself.
recording. Our ancestor Harrison.
Over time, I
Sutherland,
forgot
the
where
brother
that
of
tree
my
was
great-grandfather
located,
Peter
but I
Sutherland,
never
made a
forgot
recording that
about
I
Dandy
listened
Bear.
to. Because
As I grew
Charles
older,
Hill
I wanted
shared
to
with
know
me,
more about him. I had many
Sisters
questions.
telling
I've
the
already
secret
told you that I
and
wanted to know
what happened to those
Okay,
18 children
You
who
can think
were born
about
in
writing a
Mississippi.
book. I'm writing 2 books for my grandson. My third great grandfather, Dandy Bear, may have killed himself in old age,
Still doing a
but
lot of research
how
with the
many of us
Mississippi.
could have
Going back
survived
to Mississippi and made God
being
willing and connected with a lot of his people.
in three
But I'm writing his
different
family
states,
history
Georgia,
book for my
Mississippi,
grandsons and
and
writing
Texas?
mine eventually.
So
Having
remember,
to
every
raise
single
their
person
children
is
in
important,
arms.
each family is
And then
important,
when
every
freedom
child
finally
needs to
came,
know his or her family history.
having to
It's
endure
important for us
racism
to
and many
preserve our
other
family
injustices.
histories and share them with future generations. After
Let me
all
just
the
tell you
hell
this
that
last
he
story,
went
and
through
then
on
I'm
this
really
earth,
done. And
I
you can ask
admire
questions, and those who
Dan
can't
for
stay for
surviving
the questioning
for as
comment
long as
section,
he
I
did.
will understand that you have to leave.
This is
Although I
one
did wanna
reason
take
why
some
I'm not
pictures.
ashamed
But
to
anyway,
tell this
here's a
story,
quick
and
story.
we'll continue I was on a
to tell.
plane several years ago, going on a work-related trip.
Dandy Bear's
and I don't
story
know
has
where I was
made
going.
a
Had a lot of
lasting
work on my
impact on
lap,
me.
wanting to work
To be
throughout the
honest,
whole
I
flight, and
strongly
the men
believe
next to
that
me
Dandy
struck a
Bear's
conversation
spirit
as to
won't
what
let
I
me
did for a
rest
living, blah, blah,
until
blah.
I get answers
And he told me a
and
story
find
that
ways to
everybody needs to know.
preserve
He
his story.
said,
But it's
well,
not
I'm
just
gonna tell you
Dandy
a story
Bear.
about a
Many of
case
my
that
other
occurred in
ancestors
Los
won't let
Angeles,
me
other than
rest
San Diego
until I
County. This happened
uncover
in
and
Los
preserve their
Angeles.
stories, and I can
This
start
is a
calling
white
their
guy
names
telling me
off
the story.
right
He
now.
said there was an African-American man who was
I'm very tempted to
incarcerated
see
in
who's
Los
from
Angeles.
those lines, but I'm
And right before he was about to be released from
in the
prison,
decades
they ran,
that I have been trying to
ran
get
his
answers
DNA,
about
so
Dandy
keep this in
Bear
mind.
and
So I
other
know about
ancestors
DNA.
who won't
They
let me
routinely
rest.
ran his
I've made a
DNA
lot
through
of
the system,
progress.
and they got a hit.
I've even
for an
gotten answers to
unsolved
some of my
crime.
questions
And
about
Mine
Dandy
is in
Bear.
here, so I can tell you.
Here
It was
are
a
a few
rape
examples.
An unsolved rape.
My cousin
His
Ruthie
DNA
Lee
matched
Beasley,
some of the
AKA
DNA in the rape
Saint,
kit.
who will be 91 years
And
old.
so
and
he
can't
was
be here
told,
today.
you're not getting out of here.
Saint,
This is going to
Barbara
be your third
Hawkins,
strike.
please
You're getting
keep Barbara
25
in
years
your
to
prayers.
life.
She
And he
just
was
had
saying,
a
I don't know
tragedy in
anything
her
about
family.
this.
My
And they
cousin
thought he was
Della Mae
lying.
Abram was
Thank
coming
God
from
he
Sulphur
went
Springs,
before
just
an
got out the
African-American
hospital last
female
night.
judge
Please keep
who
her in your
said,
prayers.
I listened to
Barbara
what the
as
prosecution
well. My
said,
cousin
something
Bobby
is not
Farmer, who
adding
lives
up
in
here.
Los
Some of his
Angeles,
DNA
Jody
markers didn't match
Hasseray,
that
and
kid.
Verdell
Yeah, a lot of it doesn't.
have shared
Something
additional
doesn't add up.
information with me
So the
about
prosecution
Dandy
hired the
Bear.
man who was sitting next to me, who was a
Cousin
DNA
Saint was
expert,
married to
get
one of
answers.
Dandy
You know what he told
Bear's
me?
great
He said,
grandsons.
I had to do a lot of research,
And cousin
but I
Saint is
found
also
out
my cousin on her
that
maternal
the man who
side.
was about to get 25 years to life
Not
in
only did
prison,
cousins Della
in the
Mae
rape
Abram
kit,
and Barbara Hawkins tell me what they know about
they had never ever met,
I'll
but they
share
had a
photos with
common
you of
ancestor
his
on a
children.
plantation
His
in
Texas
Louisiana
grandchildren.
during slavery.
Walter
I said,
Abram
you need to write about this, you need to publicize
and
this,
Maddie
because there are a
Abram
lot of black
Johnson were
men who are in
children of
jail
Dandy
right now,
Bear
probably
and
for the same
Walter.
reason. All of a sudden,
Walter
he wanted to end
was
this
my
conversation.
grandfather.
But here's the moral of that story.
Della Mae
Remember the
Abram,
golden
and she
rule,
knew
do
him
unto
personally.
others as you would have
Told
them
me a
do
lot of
unto you.
fascinating
Because
Maddie was the great grandmother of Barbara
you
Hawkins.
may be looking at
Barbara
somebody
lived
every
with
single
her
day from a
during part of
different
her
race.
childhood
Your
and
same
heard
race, somebody
lots
you
of
can't
family
stand.
stories.
A
Both
relative,
Barbara
treat everybody
and
kindly,
Della Mae were
humanely,
told Dandy Bear's
respectfully,
story.
because you never ever know
Preserving the
who's a
family
relative,
history
because
through
oral
oral tradition is
to
one of the
us.
easiest ways, of course, to pass on that history and make sure it never
Gwen's
dies.
over here, so I'm feeling real nervous. My husband
I've
also
also learned that Dandy Bear
Thank you
was
for your
born
time, your
around
attention, those who want to stay
1832.
for questions and answers.
His
I'm here
parents
for
were
as
born
long
in
as you
Georgia
are.
instead
And
of
if you
in
wanna say
Africa,
something,
as I
Thank
had
everybody,
assumed.
and thank you, Dr. Dale, for
Listed on the Texas County rolls during the years ranging from
whatnot, and
1880 to
feel free to tour the
1891.
museum. I just appreciate you
Polly
guys
Williams,
coming.
Dandy Bear's wife, died between
I want to
1890
ask that everybody
and
leave something for a
1900.
donation, so that I can bring more
Dandy Bear's son
programs like this.
Jesse named one of his
Okay,
sons
whatever you feel.
after Dandy Bear.
All
My
right.
second great grandfather Williams named
So, do you want to get a snack and bring it back, or what do you want to do? Because you've been
I
sitting
have
for a
found
long
the
time. You want to grab some pizza and a water for
Dandy
that?
Bear's Texas children.
Yes, I do want a group picture for those who can't stay especially. So, hey, can everybody quickly stand in here, step in here for a group picture?
You got it? I got it. You got it. Got a sister.
At the time, he lived in Lafayette, which is right on the border of Upshur and Camp counties. When Cousin Saint, who could not be here today, was 6 years old, when she was 6 years old,
her mother told her about Dandy Bear and took her to the place, and at that time, she said it was nothing but a shack where he lived. And the tree that he killed himself on was near that shack in Lafayette. But her mother told her Dandy Bear's story, and thank God her mother showed her where he lived and died, because I have been wanting to know ever since my grandmother told me the story where he died, because I forgot where the tree was that she took me to, but thank God Cousin Saint knew. So I formed a small genealogy research team. My husband supported us and helped us and drove around and took us here, there, and everywhere, including here to this museum last year. Last year was just August and September. And Cousin Perry Duffy, Cousin Drika Johnson, Cousin Malika Crawford were all a part of that research team, and we went all over the place, courthouses, cemeteries, here to this museum. Genealogy rooms. I'll say more about that later on, because they have ancestors that won't let them rest either until they get some answers. For Perry, it's the Houghton line. So we did deep research over a series of several days, and here I am standing on Cousin Saint's porch, and she ended up taking us to the place where Dandy Bear ended his life. And so here we are. My husband was taking the picture, and Cousin Saint was not in the picture, but we were all right there near the site where the tree once stood and where the shack that he last lived in was. So this was September 2023. And then a few days later, my husband, Cousin Perry, and I went back to the site of his death to place flowers there. Where Dandy Bear lived and died is very close to Lafayette Cemetery. So I want to read a historical marker that is at the Lafayette Cemetery and tie it to Dandy Bear. Based on oral family history, Lafayette Cemetery is the final resting place of former African American slaves. Many of these men, women, and children were left in their final resting place without permanent headstones. One of these men was Ben Johnson. On his behalf and unnamed others, his descendants dedicate this memorial and honor their living legacy. Ben Johnson was Dandy Bear's son-in-law, married to his daughter, Maddie Abram, that I showed you a few minutes ago a picture of. Based on all the research that I've done, I strongly believe that Dandy Bear and his wife, Polly, are buried in unmarked graves in Lafayette Cemetery. So here are the main points that I would like for you to take away from the rest of the presentation and what I've already shared. Every single person is important and has a story that is worth telling and can benefit others. Each family is important. Every child needs to know his or her family history. Even if your ancestors aren't pressuring you to uncover and preserve their stories, one of the best ways that you can empower younger African American relatives is to help them learn their family history and encourage them to share it with future generations. So here are 5 reasons why it's so important for us to preserve our family histories. Number 1, even though this is Black History Month, throughout the U.S., there are strong efforts by some politicians and others to eliminate Black history from the curriculum of colleges and universities. Therefore, at this crucial time when some folks are determined to keep Black history from being taught, we must become proactive about preserving the stories and contributions of our unsung ancestors. Although we may not be able to prevent this anti-Black history backlash from occurring, we can do our part to preserve Black history by making sure that our younger family members know their personal family history and encourage them to share it with future generations. Number 2, in many K-12 schools, the only things that African American students learn about Black history is your ancestors were slaves. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus. Martin Luther King Jr. led the civil rights movement. As a result of this, most African American students leave high school with a very limited knowledge of Black history, including their personal family history. A third reason why it's important for us to preserve our family history is the U.S. economy was built on the backs of our unpaid ancestors. Therefore, real Black history should include the life stories and contributions of our unsung ancestors. Without the unpaid labor of our African American enslaved ancestors like Dandy Bear, who worked in 3 different states without wages, America would never have become as prosperous as it is today. Many corporations and families in the U.S. gained or inherited their wealth. When people try to make you feel like your ancestors were lazy, and well, let me just keep going. Many corporations and families in the U.S. gained or inherited their wealth from the labor of our unpaid ancestors who worked on tobacco, cotton, sugar, indigo, and rice plantations and elsewhere. Here's just one related example from a very powerful report that you can download for free called the Transatlantic Slave Trade Report. Quote, kidnapped Africans trafficked into New Orleans were enslaved on nearby sugar and cotton plantations. Some were enslaved by the city government, which relied heavily on enslaved Black labor to build the infrastructures that New Orleans needed to thrive as a commercial port. And once the domestic, remember after the transatlantic slave trade, whereby it was illegal to bring slaves from Africa to the U.S., when that was so-called, but they were still smuggling ships from Africa. I can tell you that right now. Do some research on Africaville near Mobile, Alabama. They were bringing slaves in here into the U.S. illegally well after the transatlantic slave trade was outlawed around 1808. But the domestic slave trade, whereby slaves could be brought from other states in the U.S. all over the place and were bred to have more and more children, that kind of thing, thrived here. And at one point, New Orleans became the second largest slave port in the U.S. after Charleston. There are 3 seats up here. There's a seat there. There's one there. There's one there. You all come on in and welcome. Enslaved Black people in New Orleans dug drainage canals along the river, laid down, I'll wait until, there's a seat right there, there's one there, and there's one here too. So if you all want to sit, you're welcome. So enslaved Black people dug drainage canals along the river, laid down streets, cleared forests, and constructed levees to protect the city. Black people enslaved by the city were forced to clear roads, collect garbage, and maintain city services. In the late 1700s, enslaved Black people twice rebuilt the city of New Orleans after it was destroyed by fire. Never learned that in the history books, huh? I have a PhD. I never ever heard any of this until I read that Transatlantic Slave Report, which not only focuses on what happened in Louisiana, but in many of the states that became wealthy as a result of the unpaid labor of our ancestors. Please download that report, and if you don't do anything else, skim it, but you will want to read it. It's powerful. So here's a 4th reason why it's so important for us to preserve our family history. Many of our ancestors were extremely wise and intelligent. That's why they're calling me from the grave. Their spirits are saying, Gail, Gail. Get the answers and tell others. Knowing the healthy strategies that they use to navigate life can help our youth develop a roadmap for success in life. This roadmap for success in life can include effective ways to develop a strong spiritual life, understand and manage emotions effectively. You know, that is one of the most powerful things besides helping them know how to develop a strong spiritual life. If we can teach our youth how to manage their emotions wisely, guess what? It'll keep a lot of folk out of jail, out of the principal's office. Because anger is a normal emotion. It's all right to be angry, but you gotta know how to manage it effectively to keep yourself from getting in trouble when you wanna fire on somebody. Helping them learn how to manage anger, pain, all kinds of things can really empower our youth. Our ancestors had to be mad every single day.
That's right.
But a whole bunch of them never ended up in jail.
Yeah.
They knew something that we can benefit from knowing.
That's right.
That roadmap for success needs to definitely include some stress reduction strategies. Stress is a normal part of life, but how we manage it is so very important. Dealing with bullying. Bullying is rampant. My grandsons, I had the whole church, my whole church praying for my grandsons who were dealing with bullying at the beginning of this school year. But God has helped me learn some ways to manage my emotions effectively, so I didn't have to go down to the schoolhouse and beat up some little kids who was messing with my grandkids, you see? I had to pray my way through it, okay? But anyway, that wasn't a part of the presentation. Also, that roadmap to success needs to include strategies to help our youth know how to excel academically in K through 12 schools, at the university level, wherever they are, whatever learning environments they are in. Develop strong financial literacy skills, ways to manage money wisely, and create generational wealth. Cousin Bill Sublett, I was hoping Bill was going to be here, and I had a phone conversation about this the other day, and he was telling me some of the stories his father told him when he was growing up about financial literacy, which wasn't even a common term back in the day. But his father knew something that helped Bill. Also, Cousin Saint's grandfather, Phil Beasley, escaped from Georgia with his 20-plus kids and his wife and trekked to Texas. Why was this man who wasn't able to go to school able to buy over 100 acres of land in Cobb County? Because he knew something about financial literacy that I sure wish he could tell me about. They knew things, but they didn't have the opportunities that we had. That roadmap to success should also include teaching our youth ways to deal with the daily microaggressions. I learned, and here's a simple strategy I learned about microaggressions. When I go to a grocery store and the checker can speak to everybody, cashier can speak to everybody who came before me, and when I come, she don't even look up and can't say hello or how's your day, but I heard you say it to the person in front. So I do, you know what Tyler Perry does in his Medill role? I do a hello. You're gonna see me, you're gonna speak to me before I give you $1 on my money, or I'm gonna wait here until you do. So I'm training that person, that when you see me, just like when you saw the person in front of me, you spoke to her, I'm teaching you some customer service that applies to me. And then, if I come back a second time, this was not part of the presentation, I'm gonna tell you anyway. If I come back a second time and you're not speaking, I'm gonna tell your manager, and then I'm calling Sprouts. It's usually Sprouts, one of these healthy food places that overcharges you for buying healthy food. But if you don't open your mouth and I'm spending all this money up here, after I told your manager, I'm gonna call the headquarters and let them know, or send them a letter or something. You need some customer training, okay, when it comes to me. But anyway, that was a side note. Teach our youth, because you see, if I get loud or ugly acting up in there, you see, I'm gonna be carted off to jail. But if I say, hello, you're gonna speak to me, sister, and you can't call the po-po on me for just saying hello, okay? So teaching just basic things that kids have to deal with every day, because we as adults still have to deal with it all, can help our youth develop that roadmap for success. They gotta know how to deal with racism, because it's alive and well. It has not ended just because our ancestors are no longer enslaved.
That's right.
They have to know how to deal with racial profiling. They have to know how to deal with driving while black. They have to know how to deal with law enforcement in a way that's not going to cause them to take a bullet because somebody was afraid that they were reaching for a gun. in the book, A Brighter Day, how parents can help African American youth, I have a whole section on that. Having your kid, telling your child, put your hands on the steering wheel. Do not pull out, try to get your ID. Don't you make any kind of move until you've gotten permission if you want to live. That was not a part of the presentation, but that roadmap for success can make the ultimate difference in a child's life. And our ancestors knew some healthy ways to deal with this stuff. They didn't have the opportunities that we have. Many were not permitted to attend school, as I said, regarding Phil Beasley, because it was illegal for them to even learn how to read. Nevertheless, many of them found effective ways to survive, to thrive, and handle ongoing problems and challenges in healthy ways. Some of the challenges that I haven't already mentioned: medical apartheid, being underserved and mistreated by doctors and nurses who think you're faking. You're a hypochondriac because you're black and lazy and don't want to work. Read the book Medical Apartheid. Read about the Tuskegee syphilis study where they used black men as guinea pigs and let them die. And tell me medical apartheid still occurs. I could tell you some stories that I won't. Wage discrimination, being underpaid or not paid at all, and wage discrimination still exists. Property theft, being swindled out of land that was rightfully yours. Having to sit in the back of buses and trains and having to give up your seat for white people. Having to go through back doors in stores and not being served in restaurants. Those are just some of the things that they dealt with. Learning how our ancestors handled these and other problems and sharing them with our youth are ways to help our youth develop a successful roadmap in life. So the fifth and final point that I will touch on in terms of why it's important to preserve our family history is our youth can even learn some important lessons from examining the lives of the so-called bad apples in the family. By bad apples, I'm referring to family members who resorted to unhealthy practices in order to deal with their pain and their anger. Remember the managing the emotions piece that I talked about, why it's so important for us to learn healthy ways? Some of our ancestors resorted to unhealthy coping strategies stemming from abuse, racism, and other sources of trauma. Some of them were misunderstood because they never explained why they behaved the way that they did. Many of our parents, grandparents, and other ancestors grew up in homes where children were not allowed to ask questions about the past. One of the main reasons is that reliving and speaking about the past may have been too painful for those who experienced ongoing trauma. Here's another example. My father died when I was 13 years old. His father, Jethro Harris Sr., died 1 year after my father died, and my father's mother, Murders Allen Harris Cummings, died 1 year after my grandfather. So my father, his father, and mother, and my father was that couple's only child. They all died 3 years in a row. This made it very difficult for me to learn about and meet my father's people. Welcome. You all want to come over here where you can see? There's room. Okay. However, in 2022, thanks to former Navy Commander Thomas Hill, and if you please pray for Thomas Hill, he's in a hospital right now, and others, I was blessed to meet my second cousin, Lorraine Denise Linwood. And this picture was taken in 2023 at the Rocky Mound Community Family Reunion. And my cousin Nathaniel Aldrich spearheads that huge gathering of people who were either born in Rocky Mountain or their parents, grandparents, or other ancestors were. Wonderful reunion. But anyway, the picture was taken in 2023, but Denise and I actually met a year before that. Since then, Denise has played a very important role in helping me find, connect with, and learn about my father's people. She's answered many of my questions and shared family stories with me by telephone nearly every week on her off day. Many of the stories that she has shared were about our great-grandmother, Rebecca Taylor Allen Nixon, AKA Mama Becky. Like my father, Mama Becky was born in Rocky Mount in Camp County, and during their childhoods, Denise and my dad often lived with Mama Becky. After moving from Rocky Mount to Pittsburgh, Mama Becky became a midwife in order to deliver the babies of women who couldn't afford to give birth in a hospital. The stories that Denise has shared with me about my grandmother Murtis, who was Mama Becky's daughter and my father's mother, and other relatives have been a blessing to me. However, the photos that she and cousin James Earl Allen have shared with me of Mama Becky are priceless because I never got to meet my great-grandmother. So I think I probably did when I was little and spent the night at my great-grandmother's house. My grandmother's house, but I don't remember Mama Becky. So here's Mama Becky as a young woman, and here she is as the midwife. Denise told me that when she was very young, one day she asked Mama Becky to tell her about slavery days. Although Mama Becky was usually willing to answer her questions, this time was different. Those were hard times, she said. Don't ask me about them again. Mama Becky was born nearly 30 years after slavery was outlawed in the United States. However, as the grandchild of former slaves, even when she became a grandmother herself, the topic of slavery was too painful for her to discuss. There's a seat here in case you want. If slavery was too painful for the grandchild of slaves to discuss, imagine how difficult it was for our unsung ancestors who were enslaved and their children to discuss. Mama Becky's refusal to talk about slavery and warning Denise not to ever ask her about it again speak volumes about the lasting effects of slavery on our ancestors and their descendants. The term post-traumatic slave syndrome has been used to describe many of these effects that have been passed down from generation to generation. Because of slavery, racism, the medical apartheid I talked about earlier, and other problems, our ancestors lived with ongoing trauma. But they didn't have access to parenting classes. They didn't have access to therapy or counseling. Many did the best that they could to navigate this life and to rear their children as they thought best. As I said, many learned healthy ways to manage their pain and anger over the injustices that they experienced, such as some relied on their faith in God, prayed and hoped for a better day. Many sang songs of deliverance. I was practicing one this morning I was going to sing for you all, but I'm not. Many sang songs of deliverance to calm their nerves and soothe their pain. By the way, scientists have found that music can have calming and therapeutic effects even on people with dementia. Others, however, were so damaged and traumatized by their experiences of being verbally, physically, emotionally, sexually abused that they held their pain inside, never talked about it, and took their secrets to the grave with them. Others resorted to unhealthy coping strategies such as adopting various types of addictions to cope with their pain. And some became perpetrators of abuse. As a result, horrible things went on within families and negative generational cycles were passed to other family members. In other words, although some who became perpetrators took their secrets to their graves, the damage from their actions was left behind for others to find ways to cope with. Because of this, some of us are still healing. Some of us are still healing from those negative generational cycles that have been passed down to us by family members who may not have even understood the damage that they were doing. I believe that knowing the truth about why various family members behave the way that they did is an important part of the healing process for us and our youth. We can learn valuable lessons from examining the lives, especially the childhoods of these so-called bad apples in our families, and share the lessons. You don't have to share all the ugly stuff that went on, but the lessons that we can learn from the lives of those who did not manage or handle their pain and anger in healthy ways. What are the lessons? Passing them on to our youth is important. We also have the options today that they didn't have, our ancestors, of seeking therapy with trained professionals. Reading self-help books. I've been reading self-help books all my adult life. I'm reading 2 wonderful ones now on emotional eating because that's my coping strategy. And I found out it was anger, stuffing food on top of anger, because you know I don't want to go to the fisticuffs type thing. So, but stuffing the food is not healthy. I'm finding some healthy ways to deal with my anger besides eating, binge eating, emotional eating. These books are really wonderful. But anyway, I've been reading self-help books all my life, listening to related podcasts or watching related online videos regarding how to heal from trauma. These are options that we have and we can share. Hey, here's some options for you with our youth. This is a reminder that we can break negative generational cycles and share strategies with our youth to help them develop that roadmap for success in life that I mentioned. We have options, they have options, and choosing the right options can improve the quality of their lives. So I talked about 5 reasons why it's important to preserve your family history. Now here's some ways to get answers about your family history. Most of them are listed on the handout. That if you didn't get one, let us know. I made like 70 handouts, so hopefully there's some extras around. But here are some ways to get answers about your family history. Start at home. See what you already have there or have access to. A lot of our relatives, older relatives, wrote the family genealogy in an old Bible. See if there are old Bibles, photos of family members, and you see old photos and you don't know who this is, start asking around, who is this black and white picture of? Letters. One of our, in fact, where's Aunt Pearlika's son sitting? Did he leave? Bobby Ray Porter, there you are. His mom wrote the family history, and one of our cousins, Charles Hill, sent it to me where his mom wrote the family history, the Sublette family history, in a way that gave me a lot of wonderful information. You may find old letters that explains who was the grandfather or something that is just one piece of the puzzle that will help you move forward, move closer to getting more answers. Birth certificates, of course, death certificates, family reunion programs, obituaries. I'm going to come back to obituaries when I talk about preserving your family history. Talking to family members, asking them if they have letters, audio tapes, or other items about your family history, and ask them what they remember about ancestors that you might have been too young to remember. Cemeteries. Visit cemeteries where your ancestors may be buried. Our genealogy team that I told you about, Cousin Perry, my husband, Cousin Saint, Cousin Denise Drika, and not Denise, Cousin Drika and Cousin Malika. We visited a lot of cemeteries last year, but the year before I visited the Rocky Mountain Cemetery in Union Chapel where I found lots of my ancestors' graves. In 2023, our research team visited the Lafayette Cemetery, Bolton, Traylor, Coffeyville, Ore City, Center Point, and then my husband and Perry and I we went to Wilkes after the other members of the team lived in the Dallas area. So here's a picture of Cousin Drika and me at the Coffeyville Cemetery here in Upshur, and then Cousin Perry and me at the Center Point Cemetery. Findagrave.com is a great free online resource where you can put in the name of your ancestor and the city and state where you think that person died and is possibly buried, and you will, a lot of times all the cemeteries in that area will come up, but You might be able to even get a death certificate that way. I use findagrave.com all the time in searching for the burial places of ancestors and more recent relatives. Texas GenWeb is wonderful. It's a great online source where you can find not only where you're at, and what I like is you click on the county. If you're researching Upshur County, Dallas County, Titus, whatever county, you click on the county, it'll show you all the records that they have. And often the black cemeteries, the African American cemeteries are grouped separately, so you can cut to the chase if you're looking for burial information and death certificates. You can also get census records, state census records from Texas GenWeb, and county history information. Very wonderful resource. US GenWeb is the umbrella website where you see a map of the entire US. You click on the state that you think your ancestor lived in, be it Georgia, wherever, and you can see all the records that you can access for free for that state. Courthouses are great places to find death records, birth records, land records, marriage records, delayed birth records. I had never heard of delayed birth records until our genealogy team and I were at the Camp County Courthouse a few months ago. And the delayed birth records books pertain to people whose births were not recorded when they were born, but after. So sometimes they have to say that a person was born approximately on this day or whatever, but a lot of people's births were not recorded, and when they became older, when they needed some information, they required a birth certificate. They didn't even have a birth certificate because their birth wasn't recorded, and they had to go and say, well, I was told that I was born around such and such a day, and their names are put in the delayed birth records book. You can also access many Camp County and Upshur County records online by going to the courthouse websites. Upshur has a lot of good information online that goes way back. Camps, like if you're looking for land records and things, it starts around the 1970s. And you'd have to go into the courthouse to get like earlier land record information. Family search centers are research centers that are located worldwide. They are staffed by volunteers who help you. They will help you build your family tree and find the information about your ancestors for free. There are hundreds of family search centers in Texas, I think 600 in Texas alone. And some are located in public libraries. You can find your local family search center by going to familysearch.org, and that's on your handout. The closest family search centers to where we are now are the Gilmer, Texas Family Search Center and the Tyler, Texas Family Search Center. It's important to call ahead of time because they're staffed by volunteers and the hours vary. So you want to make sure they know you're coming and that they're going to be open. Mount Pleasant Public Library Genealogy Room, that was on my list yesterday as a place to visit, and I did not make it there before the library closed. But you can use, I called the librarian and talked to her before I left California. You can use the books and computers in the genealogy room to find family history information, and you can schedule an appointment with a volunteer. The librarian was saying, you can schedule an appointment right now, and I'm like, I won't be in Texas long enough to do that, but when I come during the summer, I definitely plan to hang out there. This is a place I have been to several times, and it's wonderful. That is the Faye McMinn Genealogical Research Center in the Pittsburgh Public Library, Pittsburgh, Camp County. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I've been there numerous times and still have not been able to go through all the information I want to go through. This center has an extensive collection of books and articles that can help you get answers about your family history, not only pertaining to Camp and Upshur counties, but there are books there about from all of the states where people who ended up coming to Upshur. Remember, Camp wasn't formed until 1874. So it was a part of Upshur prior to 1874. But there are books pertaining to the people who came from Georgia, Virginia, Mississippi. I had a big stack of books that I was trying to go through and didn't even, get through more than one or two. So much rich information. Also, a lot of ordinary people have written their family histories and donated it to that. For example, Perry's mother wrote the Bolton family history, and the Bolton family history booklet is in there. I found the family histories that were written by some of my people's enslavers, the Isbels. I kept saying, now why are all these DNA matches with the name Isbel coming up? I said they must be related to Peter Sublet's mother, Lulabelle. They're not. It's a totally different line, and I've narrowed it down to the enslaver right here in Upshur, who enslaved some of my people and brought them from the East. So those family history booklets that are in that research center have lots and lots of information that can save you time. And so that center is open Monday through Wednesday from 9 to 12, and there's a wonderful volunteer there, that Miss Betty, that is willing to help you get answers. Last September, our research team went. Cousin Linnell and Cousin Bobby Ray came to visit our research team at that genealogy center. And then a few days later, when I went back, Cousin Brenda, Cousin Dora Lee, Cousin Tommy Hill, and my cousin Verdell all came, and it was just wonderful. Cousin Rex uses that research center also. Ancestry.com supposedly has the largest collection of genealogy records in the world. They have billions of historical records, including census records such as the 1850 and 1860 slave schedules. Why is that important? Because unless your ancestors were never enslaved in this country, you're not going to find them before 1870 in any census record, except for in the 1850 and 1860 slave schedule. And it will only have the name of their enslaver, the enslaved person's age, gender. Once in a while, there will be a first name for the enslaved person. But most of the information is about the enslaver. How many slaves that person had, what's the nearest post office, and that kind of information. Then you can click on the enslaver's name and go all the way back to see where that enslaver was born, which will give you an idea if that was the person who brought your ancestor to Upshur camp or whatever county you're researching. So you can get a lot of information about the enslavers going back to way back before they ever got to the U.S. But our people were not listed as property, not listed as human beings prior to 1870 in the U.S. Census, unless they were not enslaved. If they were freedmen, then it will be, a black person who was free. But most of the people who are going to come up will be in the 1850 and 1860 censuses. And the problem with that is, like my ancestor, Dandy Bear, his slave name was Daniel. There are gonna be a million Daniels in the 1850 and 1860 slave records. So then I have to look at the age. This could have been him. If he was in Mississippi, in Georgia, in Texas, and born around 1832, this could be my Daniel, but it might not be. I need more info. And that makes me really upset when I find out how hard it is for us to go beyond 1870 to get answers about our people, but I manage my anger in healthy ways. You can also get birth, marriage, and death records, the Texas death certificates that Ancestry.com and Family Search own. And I'm gonna say more about Family Search in a minute. That's where I got the death certificates of many of Dandy Bear's children who were born in Texas. Ancestry.com has 13,600 death certificates that you can access online, but they're not recent death certificates, but of ancestors. People, I can't remember what the cutoff year is. You can also download a lot of wonderful guides from Ancestry.com. This research guide, African American Family Research on Ancestry, a step-by-step guide that will help you get answers about your family history. You can view some of the Ancestry.com records and build your family tree on Ancestry.com for free, but a lot of the records require you to have a paid membership. The Ancestry.com app can also be downloaded on your cell phone, tablet, or of course, computer. So FamilySearch.org has, I'm doing this because I'm afraid this is going to slip off my head. I lost my hair many years ago. This is my real hair, shows you how God works miracles. But when I lost my hair and first wore a wig, I was up doing a big presentation,
and the wig was slipping off because I didn't know you needed to put hairpins in there. I kept turning around, pulling it down. So I'm self-conscious about my little ramp because it reminds me of when my wig was slipping off my head during the presentation. So please ignore me with that. But this is one of the best ways to get free information. In addition to genealogy records and being able to build your family tree for free on this website, you can look at the catalog of articles and books that they have that you can download for free, such as Family History for Beginners, which is a detailed guide, a book called A Brief History of Upshur County. Now look at the last name of this man. How would you pronounce that?
Esberger.
What is it? I'm wondering, see, Dandy Bear, was it B-E-A-R? Was it B-A-I-R? The pronunciation? And a lot of people with that last name come up as my DNA matches. But anyway, I can't say he brought him, his ancestors brought Dandy from Mississippi. But anyway, I keep, every time I look at that and I see my DNA matches with that name, I wonder. But anyway, this man, G.H. Bear, whatever, he wrote A Brief History of Upshur County, which is a book that you can download for free from the Family Search website.